introductions, and we'll start down here and go around. Thank you for modeling great mic behavior.
Of course. Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Da Silva. I am the marketing assistant.
Christina Bourne, PIO for City of Palm Bay.
And I'm Kristen Marshall. I'm in the south part of the county, Palm Bay, Florida. I am with Florida Merchant Services.
Keith Winston, Brevard Zoo.
Peter Cranes with the Space Coast Office of Tourism.
Charity Stewart with the Space Coast Office of Tourism.
Courtney Theo with USSSA.
Heather Lewis, Ron John Surf Shop. Amy McGrew, Hilton Garden Inn, Cocoa Beach.
Folks in the audience, you're welcome to. And Kristen, is this your first meeting? Did I? It is, right? Oh, welcome. Okay.
Virtual one.
Okay, that's what I was like wondering. I was like, I thought, well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Everyone else, you've been here before, right? No, you have, this is your first meeting too. Okay. Welcome as well. Sorry about that. I have no glass. There you go. I have no readers. That's my excuse today. All right. Well, thank you for coming.
And then, Mr. Chair, everybody, just so you know, people who are online, it looks like they're all staff members, so no need to go do introductions there.
We are trying to stay in line with other procedures. So if folks in the audience want to make public comment later, we'll have you fill out a card. Unless we turn to you for a specific question. So that is new, just in case you've been here before. So we're looking for a motion for approval of agenda, and then any conflicts of interest.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Heather. A second.
Sit back
There you
and see
go.
how this works.
Okay. Mike, will you please second the motion to approve the agenda? Since you're late.
Absolutely, I will.
Thank you, sir. All right, beautiful. All in favor? Any against? Okay, thank you. And approval of the meeting minutes from our March meeting. I'm looking for a motion to approve. Thank you, Mike. Second, wow, we're good. This role reversal, so appreciate you both. Okay. Then, yeah, we need to vote. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, our next item is our summer advertising campaign and plan, and Charity's going to walk us through that.
All right. So today what I'm going to show you is just for the new members of the committee. This is the summer overview of the marketing plan. There we go. It is just the one slide. This starts May 1st. It is a $2.6 million paid advertising campaign promoting tourism to the Space Coast. We have 3 categories of markets that we reach out to. We are a heavy drive market within the state of Florida. So we're continuing to reach those markets this summer, as well as our drive fly, so the Atlanta and Charlotte areas, and then also our major markets of New York, Chicago, DC, Philadelphia, Boston, and Pittsburgh. This does also include the cruise campaign. So we have the messages for visiting for vacation and then also visiting as part of your cruise experience and extending your stay. We have multiple integrated tactics working. That is a combination of linear cable TV, as well as streaming, OTT, and online video. Heavy rotation of different digital tactics, as well as social media placements, again, driving impressions, reach, click-throughs, leads, high impact lead generation ads, again, in order to build up our contact lists. Working with Visit Florida on multiple different co-ops this summer. That includes new ones such as Amazon streaming TV and AccuWeather, and then a combination of audio, radio, podcasting, and streaming audio. So a wide array of methods in which to ensure we're reaching our audience. We're also working on joint campaigns with Avelo Airlines, which just announced direct service from 3 markets into MLB. They start in June. So that's New Haven, Hartford, Raleigh, and Wilmington. They've been very active participants in working to look at, again, integrated campaigns in which to market those direct flights and promote flying into the Space Coast. And then, of course, internationally, Roxana, our UKE representative, has been very busy with sales activities. She's getting ready to do multiple shows, one with the Visit Orlando Roadshow. So a lot of travel and selling to tour operators, working with Brand USA on different co-op opportunities. So we have, for example, a program running with the Telegraph right now, promoting, again, those visits to the Space Coast. And then we're also working with Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex and TUI Airlines on a UK media journalist FAM for June to really get some earned media and coverage there. And then the TUI Airlines just started their flights back 2.5 weeks ago. And so both our internal, so using the TUI owned platforms, as well as external campaigns, have just started to promote those routes. And for those who were here last year, you remember they came in November to film their own travel guides. We just got the video preview about an hour ago, and they look excellent. So I'm very excited about how that turned out. And I think it is a great way for them to really promote to their audience and build some trust about coming to visit this destination. So a very active summer coming up.
Yeah, that TUI campaign's about $600,000, 300,000 from us, 300 from them. So that's a really good campaign and leverages their dollars and all of their marketing platforms. So it's a good program.
I had two questions for you. The first one's out of ignorance. TUI only flies in this like late spring and summer. I'm assuming that has to do with British vacations versus weather, because having British tourists come in the heat of summer seems non-optimal. Can you know what the reasoning is for that? Why they don't fly during the winter? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The UK travel pattern is, they usually get 2 weeks off over the summer window. So it's a very common travel pattern for them. In probably the last, maybe 7-8 years, we've seen a little bit of an opportunity in the fall when there's like a mid-year break in their school in October time period. That's been a kind of a secondary window, but typically winters, interestingly, at least for Florida, has not been a big UK attraction for them. They might do Mallorca, they might do, so they might do Spain, they might do something closer, but they tend not to do that big trip outside of that kind of, call it March to October window.
Yeah. Questions from the committee? I have one other one for you that's just out of curiosity. When we market in New York, that's New York City specifically, or is that throughout the state?
DMA, yes.
So I'm also curious, only that because from a resident, I'm from outside the city. I never meet people from New York City who've moved here, but I meet people from Rochester, Syracuse. And usually there's this association between travel and moving. So I'm just curious if we've ever explored those other markets, or do we get great response from New York City residents? I'm just curious because I don't see a lot of New Yorkers from New York moving there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Actually, we can talk about this now, but I was going to talk about a little bit later what our top source markets are. Of course, New York's number one. New York DMA is number one source market. So it absolutely is working. It's like by far.
I can't do that.
But there's other, like Albany's on the list. You look at there are some other markets from upstate that are on the list. They're for a little further down. And the way we've played this source market list is, we're trying to start at the top and work our way down where it makes sense, but also where there's flights. So when there's flight service, like from a Pittsburgh, which might be a little bit lower down, we're like, well, we're going to support it because they're flying right into MLB. So that gives us that direct access to the consumer and makes it much more likely that they're going to stay here versus, you know, somebody flying into MCO. So that's kind of been the play, but we absolutely we'll have some conversation later about the source markets and what we want to look at as we go into our next year's marketing plan.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item related to the summer campaign. Chelsea, will you advance the slide for me, please? Has to do with the marketing carry forward, which we have outlined for you.
Yeah, so I'll speak to a little bit to this from a budgetary perspective. Last year, when we were going through the budgetary process, we had identified about 1.75 million that we thought we would be carrying forward into the next year. And what that comes from is increase in TDT collection, bottom line. And it ultimately comes from, you know, when that's 5% is being collected by the tax collector, they bucket it based on the state statute and the county ordinance. And a certain percentage gets allocated into the marketing fund. When we saw the $23.3 million collection for last year, that was like 6.5 million higher than what we'd budgeted. So all of that gets sort of allocated across. So we had 1.75 identified, another 2.8.
Yeah.
5. Had to look at the last one. Another 2.85 was realized on top of that. So now that gets basically what happens is that goes to all of the county's mid-year adjustments are going to go to the board in May. And then they get voted on and they basically get adopted as part of the budget. So that's basically the process. So we'll have you guys look at it, approve it, that'll go to TDC, and then it'll go to the board in May. I don't know. I mean, if there are questions about any specific elements, you know, we had little bits of overage in like the fall campaign, spring campaign, nothing really unexpected. The majority of this was being allocated for the summer campaign. So we already had 1.1, I want to say 1.1 million baked into the budget for the summer campaign. This will add 1.35 to that. And then it also leaves about another 500,000 available if we need it. If we don't need it, it'll roll into next year's fiscal. So those are the biggest
So
chunks
this
of
is
it.
your proposed budget for the carryover.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And some of it, I mean, it, you know, as you can tell, some of it's going to the fall campaign, for instance, that campaign's over. Some of it was already kind of spent, if you will, but this sort of codifies it if you in the budget. So, Mr. Chair, we're just looking for a motion and approval.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What's the general distribution of the billboard?
General distribution in terms of dollar amount or in terms of where are they located? I'll let Charity talk about locations. Yeah.
So they are generally speaking along 95, 75,
Semi 4.
semi 4.
Beach
There's
line.
2 on the turnpike,
North Ave.
almost to Jacksonville, and what's on the top of I-75 on the other side?
Alley.
Ocala area. And then south as far as Miami, we've got 2 cruise based in Miami, and then coming up 95 along
Yeah, we have
the southern market.
so, and we have, just so you know, we have 23 boards. They cost about 650,000. So we had originally had a budget of about 500 and is it 550 or 500? Can't remember what the original budget was. It was about 500,000. And then we looked at adding a couple of boards down in Miami that were more specific to the cruise. So we needed a little bit more money for that. So we're at 23 boards. I don't think it's really any more than what we've had in the past. They're just
No.
kind of distributed in a little different way.
Right.
Some of those boards are electronic digital boards, so they rotate messaging. Some of them are fixed boards, so they're specific to certain things. So
So the ones in Miami, what's the thought process there?
So we
Or Cruise particularly.
cruise, yeah, is highlighting the port as an option, highlighting the ability to see the rocket launches associated with the cruise and add to your vacation rather than just that drive over. And it does
and it's a little poke in their eye.
a little bit,
I
yeah, a
knew
little
it.
bit.
I never want to like diminish my peers at other destination marketing organizations, but hey, we're number one. And we took over Miami this year for cruise globally. We're the number one cruise port in the world. And Miami was the number one previously. So it's a little bit of saying, hey, plus there's a huge population center there. So we know they do cruise out of our port as well.
You were so excited.
I actually thought that what you were gonna say is, hey, wasn't that a pain in the butt? Come cruise from us instead of Miami. So, did you enjoy that traffic? Now come to Port Canaveral, so.
Well, you
It's
know,
not quite that. It's not quite ugly.
I know, but it has a cruise ship on it, right?
does,
It
yeah.
has the big cruise ship on
Yeah.
I mean, but
Yeah.
realistically, they've got more destination options out of their seat. So it's a little bit of a tough sell, I think. So it's probably more as opposed to the eye.
It's a top of mind awareness to anybody who's interested in cruising that you have multiple options.
Okay, well, as long as you can stay.
The other thing I would say about it is knowing cruisers are a very unique category of people. They are not necessarily married to a particular port. That's one of some of the past research has shown. They are easily flippable from one port to the other based on where they want to go. So you're right. If they're going out of Miami, there may be somewhere specific that they're wanting to go, but knowing that there's also a lot of options out of our port, I think is good for them.
Boat size. We
Or
know
boat.
some people who like small luxury boats. We don't
Mhm.
have them here.
Right.
So they go to Miami, even though they'd much rather come here.
Yeah,
So-
and we've got we've got like the biggest ships in the world right now. So, that's an advantage for us. So it's a different play, but
Charity, on those electronic boards, do you have exclusivity for the tourism arena?
That is a great question. And I don't believe so. They're primarily just outside of Tampa, in the Lakeland area. But I do not believe that there is an exclusivity contract on there for tourism industry.
Okay, the only reason I ask is if you have multiple cruise messages on those electronic billboards, then they may get confused or multiple tourism messages at all.
yeah, they're more marketing like Cocoa Beach, Melbourne and
Yeah.
the beaches and kind of the different municipality destinations. But yeah, it's a good point, something to look at.
Mhm.
So again, Mr. Chair, we're just looking
Yeah,
for
so- Other
Motion on
further,
that.
so we're looking for a motion to approve the carryover from last year. As you said, some of it's already been spent, but the number's up, so
Make a motion to approve.
thank you, Heather. Somebody new want to step in? Yes, go for it.
A second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, guys. Okay, the next item, Mr. Chair, is I had been requested to go to the Cocoa Beach Hotel and Lodging Association meeting about a month or so ago. And came away with some interesting insight that I wanted to share with the committee because I think it may be something that may become before the committee at some point. For those of you that are maybe new to our committee and have not tracked our current campaign, which highlights on the Space Coast, so Cocoa Beach on the Space Coast, Melbourne and the beaches on the Space Coast, Titusville on the Space, all the way down in all the different municipalities. That started in early 21. That was a result of a lot of research, a lot of work by a new agency that we had just hired at the time, Anbar, has, I think for all intents and purposes, looking at every number that we can possibly look at, had a lot of success. We've seen increases in brand awareness of all the municipalities. I would say on the Space Coast has increased in its awareness, but so has Cocoa Beach, even though they were already very high. So is Melbourne, so is Palm Bay, so is Titusville. Anyway, all of our information that we look at, tourist development tax collections, hotel numbers, have all been very positive, and we've shared a lot of that with the committee here. Of course, we shared it all along as we've gone through in past committees. However, there's been a number, probably a small number of hoteliers in Cocoa Beach that aren't completely happy with the way that they're positioned within the campaign. The fact that when the campaign first came out, it featured rocket launches from all over the county, kind of highlighting the fact that we're the Space Coast. You can see a launch no matter where you are. So whether you're kayaking or fishing or surfing or whatever you're doing, launches are something that occur here. Not, again, small group, not necessarily super happy with that positioning, and wanted to perhaps have a little bit more feature of the beach, and Cocoa Beach being a little bit more prominent in its name and maybe in the headlines per se. So we went to the Cocoa Beach Hotel Lodging Association with the thought of a little bit of an olive branch, a little bit of, hey, can we work together to develop maybe a co-op or something that we can do together to try to, get you happy and get you happier with where we are with the campaign, but also share resources. Obviously, Cocoa Beach Hoteliers, Hotel Lodging Association, they collect dues, and they have marketing dollars that they do spend, some of which they do spend with us in different programming. We do a pretty big spread in the Visit Florida Guide together. So, we do different things together. So the idea was, hey, how can we work together? Let's get you happier. Let's try to work together. So the idea was, what I had pitched was, let's do a campaign where we develop a Cocoa Beach centric co-op ad, drive to your website. We'll put in $100,000. You guys put in, it would be like a 2-to-1 match. You put up 50,000, we'll put in 100,000. So it'd be $150,000 campaign. We can track it, look at it, try to do it mostly in a digital format so that we can really track the results. And I shared what this committee had seen at the last meeting, which Charity had shared, which was our numbers from like Adara and some of these other ROI numbers that we get. The response back was interesting. It came back, well, we don't really want $150,000. We really want $5 million. Because we think Cocoa Beach, and its area, including Cape Canaveral, et cetera, collect 50% of the TDT. So we think we should get 50% of the marketing budget. Obviously, that's not something that I have the authority to authorize in any sense or whatever. So I said, okay, well, you guys think about it and let us know what your thoughts are. There were.
Right now they get water.
Well, no, I mean, honestly, I will say it's very difficult to quantify the exact amount of budget that goes to any municipality, because the way we spend our dollars, we do activities just like any destination marketing organization. We partner with TUI, we partner with airlines, we do other kinds of programming, so we're not out there talking in every media outlet and every dollar that we spend, whether it's, Melbourne, Palm Bay, Titusville. Some of them we do, certainly our digital we do, but in the TV, it's multiple. There's multiple destinations that are talked about in that spot. We're just, I think, we shared the last time the countdown spot that we're working on, that has multiple destinations. So it's tough to get to an exact dollar number. We've tried to look at, like in the digital where that does feature a municipality, we've looked at like media impressions. Certainly an exorbitant number of media impressions go to Cocoa Beach and go to the cruise messaging, because those are huge messages that we push out. So they do get them, I would say they probably more than any other singular area, they'd probably get more coverage in our media than anyone else. But when you look at the aggregate of our budget, it's a little hard to plop it into a particular bucket. But if you were to do that, my guess would be Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral are part of District 2 of the county. District 2 would probably get the highest amount of dollars, realistically. Is it 50%? Probably not, because a lot of what we do benefits the whole county. So it's hard to, isolate it to a particular district per se. So that being said, subsequent to that, there were a number of email back and forths about, what that would look like to work together. Further concerns about whether what we were doing was effective, which of course, my question is, if anybody in this room, anybody in the county has any data that shows something that we need to be concerned about or need to be aware of or need to be looking at from our marketing perspective, we're totally open to that. We want that. We're open to any ideas about how to better accomplish our marketing. I mean, I think we've always said, we're always open. This committee is advisory to the TDC. TDC is advisory to the county commission. We follow the direction of the county commission. Ultimately, they're our bosses because we report up through the county manager's office. So, if there's any ideas or thoughts, we are open to them. We're willing to work together. We'd like to try to work together. And that was my whole thing about going to them, was to say, let's try to work together to get something that you are satisfied with, accomplishes what you want from a creative perspective, run that advertising, and then let's do a comparative between what we're doing now and what we could do in a co-op together. I think it's a perfectly reasonable thought. That being said, I at this point, I think we're a little bit dead in the water on it. I think they may be pursuing other avenues in terms of, talking maybe to the county commission. I know they've met with District 2 commissioner about this. I've yet to hear anything coming back from the board at this point, but I just wanted to make this committee aware, because this isn't, first of all, we're county government, we're openness and sunshine. All of this stuff is documented as part of my email trails and part of public meetings that we've had. So I just think it's important that you guys are aware of it, because it may come to this committee, it may come to the TDC, it may come to the Board of County Commissioners at some point. But I guess what I would say is, knowing that there are some concerns and that there are some in the community that are not 100% satisfied with our marketing efforts. Some of you have been part of this committee for a few years now. I think it behooves us all to kind of have that open-mindedness to have discussions about where do we go in the future. We're talking about 2024 planning, and our thought is going to be, and we'll share in a little bit, our thought is to have this committee kind of opine on what we've been doing and think about the future, think about where the economy is going, think about just macro issues that we need to be concerned with, but start giving us feedback so we can begin to develop a 2024 plan. If that means, part of that may mean looking at new creative options, 100% open to that and willing to do that. Our agencies here today, they're great supporters of whatever it is, whatever direction we provide. So if there are things in the strategy that we need to tweak or want to look at, we absolutely can do that here, starting with this committee. And that was by the way, that was one of my comments in the emails, and if any of you want to see the series of emails, I'm happy to share it. But I said, whatever we do together, it has to follow our process, right? We have a governance process in the county. The Tourist Development Council is designated by state statute to oversee our funding, oversee what we do from a marketing perspective. They have to approve our marketing plan before it goes to the county commission. So this committee is where the marketing plan starts, and the input and the feedback that we get helps us develop that. And then that goes to the TDC, and then the TDC makes the recommendation to the board who votes on it. So, you know, the board has voted unanimously to support the marketing plan the last 3 years. We've never had any real pushback on that. Maybe this is the year we do, so we'll see. But you know, it all really starts here at the kind of lowest level of governance. So I said, you know, whatever we do, we have to make sure it follows our process, goes to the marketing committee, goes to the TDC, and on from there. So again, at this point, we're just, you know, holding pattern, you know, nothing really specific has come, but Mr. Chair, I'm just sharing with the group for
Sure.
edification.
So just a couple of comments, and then I'd like to open it up for comment. So Peter, so again, you know, we are an advisory group to the TDC, and the TDC is advisory to the county. I would say until the last year or so, usually it was a pretty direct line. Everything worked through TDC to county. There has now been precedent set on a few issues that people just go right to the county. So it's entirely possible that at some point we might be outside that process. That precedent has been set. And just want you to be aware of it for those of you new on the TDC on a couple of issues. This is the 3rd year of the campaign, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And traditionally, just I don't know enough about destination marketing. Traditionally, do you end up riding a campaign until it loses effectiveness, or do campaigns run out of effectiveness? Or I mean, we've invested a lot of funds into this campaign, right?
Right.
How does that work? Or do you just look every year and say, is it working, and keep doing it? What's
Yeah.
traditional?
I mean, you know, the biggest experience of my career, I spent 16 years with Visit Orlando and did their global marketing. We did marketing campaigns in 8 countries. We spent probably about $8 to $10 million in the US, and we spent another 15 or so in all these other countries. So that's my experience, biggest experience with campaigns. While I was there over the 16 years, we had 3 different really distinctive, what I would call distinctive campaigns that had overarching messaging that was underpinned with all kinds of different, you know, advertising components. And, you know, who's to say a campaign is ready to die or not? I mean, you look at McDonald's, they're bringing back the yeah, Mike can say that. But you look at McDonald's, they're bringing back the Hamburglar. Okay. I mean, you know, Wendy's brings back every once in a while, they'll bring back Where's the Beef. So, you know, when you think a campaign might have run its course, you look at opportunity to kind of develop it into the next thing. Obviously, you look at the research, you look at the numbers, are things changing? Are people's impressions changing? You know, the main sources of data for us, just to kind of refresh, you know, we start with tourist development tax because that's 5% of lodging revenue. Lodging revenue represents about 45% of what people spend when they come here. So it's a really good indicator of how tourism is doing in general. Then we dig in, we look at STR reporting. I look at it ad nauseum. Tom Hermanson gives me a hard time all the time because I always overanalyze and have all these different pro formas and different things I show him, and he's like, why are you spending all the time doing this? Just focus on the results. And I'm like, well, I like to look at the numbers. I like to see what's happening with the numbers and how they're, you know, what market segment is doing and all these different things. I look at ADR and I dig into that. I look at it comparatively. I try to compare it to our peer set. We have in the STR reports, we get peer set from like Sarasota and St. Pete and West Palm and Jacksonville and Fort Lauderdale and Miami. We look at what, you know, we look at Orlando, we look at what Orlando's doing. So we look at all these numbers. That's a big piece of it. Now vacation rentals become huge. By the way, when you look at TDT, think 2/3 hotel, 1/3 vacation rental. That's what's happening now. That's what's happening now. So that's a huge shift, by the way. I mean, it used to be the hotels were king, and they still are king at 2/3, but vacation rental has come on really strong. There's now 13,400 vacation rental units in Brevard County. That's 3 times more than there were 2 years ago. So another big category we look at, and we spend a lot of time looking at that data. Then we do primary research. Every year we do brand research, which looks at the brand health. It looks at aided and unaided recall, looks at whether, looks at what I call the big three, which is, did you see our ad? Did our ad influence you? And did you book something as a result of seeing our advertising? Like those three questions to me, if you can get that from the consumer, that's really great. And those numbers have doubled and tripled over the last 3 years since we've been asking that question. So we do that where we just tested creative. We always test our creative. We just tested the new TV spot. We had I think we had shared with you the last time that there were different voiceovers. And so we said, you know what, let's just go out, do a disaster test to make sure that the spot is not just gonna crap out completely. And then secondly, let's see if there's any one of these voiceover treatments that might do a little bit better than the other. They absolutely scored. They all scored out of 5 points, 4.3. We had 600 responses so far, and we're still running it, but 600 is more than statistically significant. And it scored a 4.3 out of 5, which is very good. They all scored very well, and they all scored like about the same. So like, okay, well, pick one, because all three came out really, really good. So, we test our research or test our creative with research. And again, to your question, Keith, when do you know is that things have worn out? Well, that's why we're trying to come up with some new elements of the campaign. So the campaign started very rocket focused in the first year and a half, 2 years. And then the creative that we're showing you now sort of has this countdown thought to it. And then we also developed last year some new cruise creative, which showed that you could, talked about the accessibility, and it showed like a gangplank, and you could walk right off the ship and get right on the beach, or right off the ship and right to the zoo or to the Kennedy Space Center. And so we're trying some different things to roll in creative, again, to avoid that sort of fatigue, because we know that if you keep running ads, they do eventually burn out.
So just as a take home from all that, because is that part of our job is to every year sort of use a critical eye and our knowledge to see
Absolutely.
if changes are needed. I didn't mean to imply it had run its
No,
course.
not at all.
It's just like, it sounds like they can last multiple years. You have to judge it in real time.
Yeah.
The concerns that you heard from the Lodge Association was not Cocoa Beach focused enough and
Right.
not beach focused enough.
Right.
And so, I mean, I just want to put out, that's part of our job to give input on that as we look at 2024 and the
100%.
campaign, and for all of you to ask those questions and see if you have concerns about it. I mean, obviously, the numbers have been spectacular, so it's hard to argue with the data coming in, but our job is to be forward thinking and see if there's
Yeah, I
anything in
mean,
the market.
it's interesting. One of the comments in one of the back and forth with the email was, oh, well, we would have, from a economic perspective, from a ADR perspective, from a tourism perspective, we would be doing well regardless. And I'm a marketing guy. So at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, okay, look, if that's true, then it really wouldn't matter what we do, right? So it wouldn't matter whether we put Cocoa Beach first or last or didn't use it at all. That's not true. And nobody believes that, even though that I heard that said. It's like, look, our ADRs certainly are higher as a result of what I would call compression, what I would call inventory, demand, what I would call inflation. Absolutely. All of those are factors, but would they be as good if we had a really crappy marketing program or no marketing at all? And that's always the multi-million-dollar question. Why does McDonald's and GM and Coke, why they're number one? Why do they spend billions and billions on advertising? Well, because they have to, because that's how you keep market share. And when I looked at the market share last year between us and our competitive set, nobody had a greater room night demand, which is hotel rooms rented. That's what I look at. It's 2/3 of our TDT, and it's probably the singular number that I can look at and say, if I'm filling up more rooms than I did last year, I know my marketing's working for me. And you know, I don't know if everybody agrees with that or not, but that's just my perspective is, you know, when Orlando started building, when I was in Orlando, we started with about 50, 60,000 hotel rooms. They've got twice that now. And I kept saying every year, how are we going to keep filling these rooms? How are we going to keep filling these rooms? Well, the marketing just kept working. You know, Orlando's a global brand now. And you know, those rooms are filled. I mean, they're running, you know, they had some setbacks with COVID like everybody did, but they're right back where they were, and they're filling up 110, 115,000 rooms now. So, you know, we've got a tenth of that. We've got 10% of that, about 10,500 rooms. And we're looking at the highest occupancy this year that we will have ever had, and the highest ADR and the highest RevPAR and all of that. So again, I think you're asking the right question, Mr. Chair, which is this committee really needs to look at all of those factors, look at the creative. Can the creative morph? Absolutely. Can we, you know, have offshoots or new elements? Absolutely. There's no reason we have to stay exactly where we are positioned. And, you know, as long as things are working well and we track it, you know, and make sure that the results are there, you know, I think we'll be good.
So we can, so I just want to encourage, I mean, I think that the mind thing is to walk away with that mindset. That's our job. We can certainly talk about it today or not. If you have comments. Okay, then let's open it up. And I'm curious if any of you have similar concerns about the focus being a little more regional and on space as a unifying piece versus beaches in Cocoa Beach. So I'm happy to open up the comments, thoughts, questions.
I'm gonna let everybody else. You know, I'm gonna tap it. All right. Really?
Yep. Are you on green?
So as far as, whether a campaign has run its legs or not, you know, a lot of that has to do with frequency. So if you've got a lot of frequency, then you do need to change up the message more often. Because of the scope of the advertising, we probably don't, you know, fully, you know, get our money's worth out of a campaign after 3 years. 4, maybe 5, absolutely. So if you are doing adjustments and evolving it over the years, then you're doing your job. But you know, it's because of the nature of our product that we're marketing, it's really tough not to rehash a lot of things that have been done year after year, decade after decade. And I see that, and you can appreciate it. So that said, I don't really believe that the creative or even the message is the issue here. I think it's all about control. And, you know, there's definitely, you know, a couple of players that basically want their own version of the TDC to just do Cocoa Beach in the way that they want to do it. So that fight for control has always been there, but unfortunately, you know, right now there's enough Kool-Aid drinkers that are making some noise. So, you know, it's an indefensible position, you know, just hearing all of the facts about it. So, you know, it's concerning. It really is. And you know, I think the more people that are aware of what's going on, you know, the less the efforts here can become a victim of politics.
Other comments, concerns, Heather, Cocoa Beach institution?
Well, I wanted to say with the campaign that we've had going, I feel like, from coming to these meetings for a couple of years now, you are regularly making changes and tweaks and keeping it fresh. So I feel that we're getting the value out of it. Hopefully there's still legs for it as you're, making these additional changes to it. So, but that's always the balance that we have to look at. But I think in looking at these other questions, which, have come up in the past, come up, and will probably continue to come up on how, what the focus should be. Beyond looking at, whether it's, percentages or divvied up, I think we need to also look at what that does to the messaging and the campaign as a whole. And make sure that, if, whichever direction the TDC or the commission, eventually, decides on this, that we're able to have a cohesive campaign that still is getting the Space Coast out there and is getting, the messaging to the right audiences, and that it's making sense to the people that we're trying to bring here.
And we have obviously diversified. I'm looking around the room. We got 2 Vieira institutions and Bombay. We're spread out. Other thoughts or comments? I think it's a legitimate question, Peter. I appreciate you bringing it up for us
Thank
to
you.
just keep about, and if we have concerns. And I think the other main message I heard today from a lot of the marketing professionals in the room were the same thing, which campaigns can get stale if you don't freshen them. And we need to be rigorous, I like that, rigorous about doing that to make sure we're really getting the most bang out of it. Our other charge today, and this is always the same, is anyone seen anything out there? This is our next item, market conditions, anyone see anything out there that concerns them in terms of forward thinking, downturns, changes, looking ahead from hoteliers, and do we have any bookings in the room? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Are you seeing any weaknesses in your summer reservations or anything we should be knowing about?
No, it's full speed ahead.
Okay, good. We love to hear
Yeah,
that.
June is
Thank
looking
you.
really good. I feel like, February, March is always our high season, and then it kind of dips down, but I feel like it's still continuing. We just every month it's like, okay, we thought we were gonna slow down, but it really hasn't. So it's good, and more cruises. And Cocoa Beach. I am in Cocoa Beach, so I don't have any comments about the last subject, but possibly in the future. But yeah, no, I think it's a good outlook. I think we're looking for a good summer. So
I always like to quote song lyrics, and the road goes on forever and the party never ends. So
Yeah.
that's,
Okay, so guys, we're on 24 straight months of best month for that month numbers. So starting in April of 21 through what we don't have March yet, but what will be the best March. And by the way, March will probably also be the best month we've ever had, with over 3 million in collection. First time we've broken 3 million in TDT collection. But yeah, since April of 21, we've been hitting records every month. So I've been through, this is probably my 4th cycle of economy going up and down since I've been in tourism, and so I know what goes up must come down. So it won't be going on forever, but it's a pleasant thought. But yeah, not reality. But yeah, the next one actually really kind of just ties in, Mr. Chair, if I might, real quickly. We did this last year and it was very effective and helpful for us as we were developing our marketing plan. In front of you are a couple of different pieces of paper, and if I might just take a second on each one and just describe what it is, why it's relevant, and then I really feel like, give you guys some time to think about it, mull it over, and come back in May with some feedback for us so that we can then take we don't meet in June, so we can take kind of the month of June, develop the plan, and come back and present it to you guys in July. So that'd be sort of the timing. Then we take it to the TDC in July, and then we go to the Board of County Commissioners in August, typically is what happens. By the way, we're also in the midst of working on our budget. We have to submit the first draft of our budget to the county by May 1st. it looks like we're going to have in excess of $12 million for marketing. So that's incredibly significant. When I started here, it was about half of that. So in 4 years, we've doubled our marketing budget, which is, I don't know too many companies in the world that have been able to do that. So that's pretty incredible. But let me start, since I had already talked about the source market sheet, let me start with that. If you look at our source markets, I broke it out into Florida and out of state. Because I think of Florida, I think of it differently. When I think about marketing to Florida, I think of a drive market kind of messaging. When you get out of state, then you kind of can have a mix, like Atlanta, Charlotte, they're kind of a mix of drive and fly. And then, and then we have markets that are further afield that, are certainly fly markets. And that's a whole different, to me, that's a little bit of a different ask to get those people to come. But this is where this data comes from. We have a company called MotionWorks. We used to work with a company previous to this that was called AirSage. Both of them do basically the same thing. They take cellular data, it's scrubbed data. We don't know who these people are. We don't know where they, what their address is, but they know where they're from. They know what market they're from, because every phone is keyed to a billing address. So that billing address ultimately is, sort of recorded somewhere. Again, it's scrubbed, so you don't know exactly what the address is, but you just know, hey, it's from New York or wherever. And by the way, it's also domestic data, so it's not any international. We don't get Canada. We're working on Canada, but we don't get it today, and then nothing from any other country. So it's domestic. If you have a GPS enabled phone, it's got to be a smart device to have that. Then they are able to track that, and they can look at it in different ways. They can cut it and slice it and dice it. They can slice it from where is it coming from. We can actually, for events, we can draw like a square on a map, and we can actually look at what came to that event in a particular time period, and we can look at it by different cuts of the day. So less than 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. In this case, what we did was we just said, hey, just give us 12 hours, because you figure if you're here for 12 hours, you're pretty much, you've intended to come here. Maybe you're an overnight, maybe you're not, but at least we know you've been here for the day. So that was where we got this data from. So that's all that it is, but it's helpful. I always think it's fascinating that, Orlando and Tampa always do well. Miami and West Palm, very, very well also. So very strong markets for us. And we get a lot of visitors from those areas. One of the ones that I would eyeball is Fort Myers. Of course, Fort Myers has had, they've had a really rough last couple of years, and certainly from the hurricane that hit last year. Not only do they have the problem of their hotel inventory, about half of it is offline, but their infrastructure is really damaged, and they're still kind of in the recovery mode at this point. That being said, there's two things that I think are happening with Fort Myers that affect us. One is Fort Myers is, as you can see, a pretty good number of people who live in Fort Myers and whose cellular devices tagged to Fort Myers and Naples are coming here. So that's one thing. And then secondly, people that might have looked at Fort Myers and Naples as a vacation destination in the past are having to look for other options, at least for the next year or two. So those are two things that are happening. It's on my radar to kind of think about that, and something that we should think about when we're looking at the Florida market. On the out-of-state markets, really interesting. And you can tell the nerd in me, because I just love digging into this data, and I've written several. If you ever read my newsletter articles, I've just written a bunch of stuff about this because it just fascinates me. But we are now marketing in just as part of what I would call our main campaign: New York, Atlanta, DC, Philly. We added Boston this year, first year, Chicago, and then Charlotte. Minneapolis got added only because Sun Country now has direct service from Minneapolis. So look what happened. Minneapolis was already a strong market for us in the top 10, and now they've popped up to number 6 this past year. Now they've got direct service, so great market for us, and that really helps. Nashville was on the list because Nashville had direct service from Allegiant. That is being discontinued. So Nashville is probably going to come off my list as far as a market that I think we should spend a lot of money in, because I think they would come anyway as part of the drive market. I don't necessarily think we have to do anything specific, but more importantly, there's not going to be direct airline service. Raleigh just started with Avelo, new airline. So we're going to keep our eye on Raleigh. We're doing $100,000 marketing support for that flight. So that's just going to be some billboards and some digital ads and things like that to help kind of seed that flight. But we want to probably continue with Raleigh, and Charlotte's a good market. So we see that North Carolina is a good market in general for us. Then you go down and you see a few weird ones. It always strikes me that LA's in there. People from LA love Central Florida. Why? I don't know. Does it have to do with Disney, that there's Disney there, so they have to see Disney here? They have to kind of go to the mothership because the Disney there is like really small, and then come to Disney here, it's like a whole nother thing. But this is coming here. This is coming to Brevard County. So if they are coming, that it was always that way in Orlando, we saw LA pop. So I guess, if they're coming over here, then maybe they need to see the beach. They want to see the East Coast because they live on the West Coast. So I don't know. I always think it's a cool thing to be able to say you dipped your toes in the Pacific. Now you got to dip them in the Atlantic. But anyway, they wouldn't be a market I would necessarily recommend going and doing anything towards. I think they just have a natural affinity to coming here. Dallas has always been one of those markets that we've looked at this market for many, many years. Half the market goes east, half the market goes west on vacation. If we ever got Southwest Airlines flights into MLB, I'd spend a lot of money there because they would be coming here. But that hasn't happened yet. So maybe someday. Anyway, Pittsburgh's on the list because Allegiant flies from Pittsburgh. Their flights have done so well that when I offer to spend marketing dollars with them, they say, no, we're good. So
Seriously?
yeah. I've never had an airline turn me down on a market, but they had turned me down for Pittsburgh.
Nashville and Charlotte.
Right.
But
Right.
Pittsburgh's doing well.
Pittsburgh's doing extremely well, and they don't need any marketing help, and they're just hunky-dory. So yeah.
Nashville Allegiant out of MLB.
Nashville was Allegiant, and they just announced recently, due to their basically pilot shortage, that's one of the markets that they're cutting. So yeah. So it opened about, it's been about a year. Yes. And honestly, that's about the time that airlines attention span, this short attention span disorder, they can last about a year in a market. And if it doesn't perform, yeah. Now, that being said, we are in conversations with Allegiant. In fact, our contact at the airport is actually in Las Vegas talking to Allegiant today about some other service. So we think that I'm not sad about Nashville. Let me just put it that way. I'm sorry, you guys, but I'm not, because I think there are other markets. I think we will get Nashville business no matter what we do, but there are other markets that I think if we get direct service from LB that will really help us. So that's what I'm hoping that happens. That's kind of the conversation we're having with them. I can't tell you right now.
Okay.
Sorry. It's all negotiation, but yes, but there's some bigger market. I guess I'll just say there's some bigger markets, maybe some more opportunistic markets.
In the top 7.
No.
That's good.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Top 7 are coming to MLB.
Just because we're
By
coming up
fall
on an hour,
2023.
Peter.
Okay, let me wrap this up and then I'll go.
What you need from us.
Yeah, so this is just how I think it's a helpful tool. By the way, Hartford and New Haven. We didn't ask for it, but Avella wanted to fly from there, and they also wanted to fly from Wilmington, Delaware. We'll see how they do. I just don't know at this point. So, but this is just a tool. It's just something to look at. I think it's important to look at your source markets. It also, I think, will help direct where we may put some of our marketing spend. But obviously, in a perfect world, wouldn't it be great if we could just advertise in all 20 of our top source markets in the US? Not a realistic thing, because even with $12 million, that will not get us there. So, you know, when we get to 20 million, then we can talk. But right now we're not at that point. The other sheet is something you've heard numbers from in the past. I just wanted to share the detail of it. This is the ROI analysis we do with Adara. Adara is the company that they do two things. They put tagging on our digital ads and all kinds of digital ads that appear across all different platforms. And then they're also an advertising platform, a digital advertising platform in their own right. With the advertising tags, if somebody sees our commercial, so they had served an ad, they are able to track that person's device. And I know it sounds creepy, but this is what they do. They track the person's device, and they can actually look and see if they went to a booking site, and if they searched, and if they actually booked something. And it's there's a whole bunch of data that's provided by everyone from Marriott to airlines to, you know, hotels. And so I get questioned on this a lot, but it's real data that comes to them real time, and it basically shows that if somebody saw a spot, what happened as a result of that, and they show the
Oh, you love
booking numbers.
Pittsburgh.
I do love Pittsburgh because we know we're getting the numbers out of it. So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. So, you know, and I'm not doing a
Up there too.
right,
So that
right.
stinks.
right. So, but look, we look at what we were spending in Nashville, $13,000. I don't have to do anything to get that. I could stop spending that 13,000. I'd still get that number. So there's sort of it's interesting when you look at ROI. There are markets we're spending a lot in, and the ROI is a little bit lower. Well, yeah, but that market's Orlando, right? So, you know, you're getting a lot of people from Orlando, and you're getting a lot of overnights from it. But what it does show, and if you break it out by the Florida markets versus the southern markets versus the northern markets, you know, typically what happens is the farther you go, and this has always been this way in tourism, the farther you're bringing people in, they stay longer, they spend more, so you get a higher ROI. That's sort of the bottom line of it. So it makes sense to look at that, but you also have to be cautious not to make too many rash decisions and say, oh, well, let's stop spending in Florida and spend all our money in New York because we're getting a better ROI. Yeah, I don't know that I would do that, because it doesn't necessarily track that way. So, but this, I think, just helps give a thought process to the markets and where we are and what we might want to do more or less of. And then I think the other question is, where's the economy going next year? So on this sheet that we wrote up, you know, Charity and I just kind of took some of the questions that we had last year, but then we added a few. So just look these over. I mean, there's just things like, you know, we know that more destinations are in the marketing game now. A lot of those that were kind of COVID hangover markets are now back into marketing again. So maybe last year they weren't, but this year they are, and next year they certainly are going to be even more. So what do we do about that? What about our partnerships with airlines, working with the airlines? We can talk about that. Big question number 2, what if there is what if, you know, I always play this game in my head. Okay, when is the month that's not going to be the best month ever? And, you know, when are we going to start seeing those numbers go the other way? And what if that happens next year? What do we do? Do we focus more on the drive markets? Do we focus more on our core markets? Do we circle the wagons, or no, let's just keep out there, because there are people that are going to travel even in a down market. They might be higher income people who aren't quite as affected. So maybe we go with a higher demographic, blah, blah. So all of that conversation I think would be good to have next month. 3, look at the ROI by market. What else should we be focusing on? What other kind of data? Last year I had given in the marketing plan, and I'll do some of that again. I'll do some summary numbers for things like TDT, STR reporting, vacation rental, room night demand, all that kind of fun stuff I'll put in there again. But are there other data points that you would like to see? Are there other things that you think we should be doing research about? I told you about the brand research. I'm happy to share that with with everyone. We can share the last round of it and what that looked like. But are there other questions we should be asking? Are there other things that we should be getting from the consumer? We're very fortunate. We have a full-time research person here in our office. We also have a partnership with Downs and St. Germain. It's a research company that's under contract with us. We just did a 3-year contract with them, and we can anything you can dream of, they will help us execute. So if there are questions out there that you're longing to get. Now, as far as the long lead kind of where is tourism going? We have access to third-party research, like Longwoods is a really good one, because they asked the question about to the consumer, are you planning on taking a trip in the next 12 months? What does that trip look like, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll get some of that as well from third-party sources that already do that kind of stuff. But if there's anything like very specific to Brevard or Space Coast or anything like that, that you want us to add in and make sure that is part of the marketing plan, please be thinking about that. Let us know, send us, send Charity or I or Keith or whoever you want. Well, you got to watch out for sunshine. So you can't send it to Keith. You send it to staff, questions, and then we'll incorporate it and we'll bring it up next month.
Realistically, if people want other data, they should let you know, but chances are, if it's easily pulled, we'll have it by the May meeting. If it takes some research, it won't be by the May.
Yeah, I don't think like if it was a whole new research thing, probably no, we wouldn't have it by then. But we could get, there are things you can get pretty quickly. So we could certainly get it to be part of the marketing plan by July, I would think, for the most part. So
You would probably already have one thing that I'd look for, like on this list, and that is average length of stay. I'm just curious about further out markets. If we're getting more from the Midwest,
yeah.
places like that, is that helping the hotels midweeks and?
Yeah, we're right in the midst of doing a visitor spending study. Unfortunately, it won't be ready till this fall, but because it's a big study and it's very complex, and we've done them in the past. And what we don't have, we have length of stay, average length of stay, but we don't have it by source market. So I've asked Deborah, as our research person, can we add that to the visitor spending study for us? But again, it won't be, unfortunately, it'll be a little later, so we won't have that till the fall. But I would bet a lot of money that people from New York stay longer than people coming from Atlanta, or certainly people coming from within state. So I think the farther away you are, you probably see the LOS being longer. Yeah.
Bigger hit. Less traffic.
Right.
So, our job is to think about these, get back to staff if you have questions, and then hopefully we can really devote the meeting to having a discussion.
Yes.
Less reporting would be great.
Yes, sir.
Any other
Shut up.
comments before we get public comments? Any public comments? Do we have any public comment cards? Thank you for all of your time. Good discussion today. We ran a little long. I'll try to keep it to an hour, but I think it was primed us for a productive meeting. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good job as usual.